across the lake. See, there's plenty of schools.
We have my
Private shows going on. that are
You guys
pretty
ready?
nice.
You're the mic.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am calling the meeting to order for July 7th. And if you're able to stand and join us for the pledge, please do. If you're not, we understand.
Congratulations to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all so much. Clerk Clark, will you call the roll, please? I will.
Trustee Mojica. Trustee Lyman.
Here.
Trustee Cascarella.
Present.
Trustee Bowen. Trustee Fedewa. Excuse me, Treasurer Fedewa. Clerk Clark. Supervisor Brewer.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We have a quorum here tonight. We are going to continue on with the agenda. We have one item under communications, and that is the Board of Water and Light Renewable Energy Plan. And I believe in that plan, there's an opportunity for the public to place comments on something. So I'm sure the board is all taking a look at that. And for the members of our community, you can certainly read that document. And if you'd like to provide comments, you can do so. Now we are on to public comments. Speaking of
We need to
comments,
set the agenda.
pardon me?
We need to set
Oh.
the agenda.
The agenda was still. Okay, we have an agenda before us. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. It's been moved, and is it supported? It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Any amendments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you so much, Mary.
No problem.
Now we're on to public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to make public comment? You have 3 minutes. And please state your name for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Lonier, 8415 Joe Pass, Lansing, Michigan. Would like to speak against the CATA proposal. I would like to say, as a resident that uses Marketplace at least twice a day, if not more than that, it's totally disgusting what's happened to that corridor since CATA has gone in there. I cross it every day on St. Joe, and if anybody's ever been there, you'll see, especially in the springtime, the intersection is not big enough to support a CATA bus turning there. So they cut the corner, drive over the curb, bust the curb. There's a big plastic box for one of the 500 internet providers we have that's there, that's all smashed and broken up half the time too, that they come and replace that. My kids are 25 and 23 right now. When they were younger, the coolest thing they ever wanted to do was to ride from our subdivision to Steak and Shake. And when we felt it was good enough for them, that they're responsible enough to be able to cross the road with a stoplight, my wife and I said, okay, you guys can do that. We trust you with that. Driving up and down through there now and seeing the CATA bus stops there with the garbage carts, the shopping carts flipped over, garbage scattered everywhere, people standing around there. And when you drive by, it reeks of marijuana because that's what they're doing is they're standing there waiting for the bus, getting high. There's no way in a million years, my kids or any other kids that I've seen since that's happened have been riding their bicycles up and down through there. The township does a lot of stuff for the few. I would like to see them do more stuff for the many. We canceled the fireworks, which were for the many. CATA is for the few. If CATA needs more money to support the people that want to ride CATA, up their fees to the people that are riding the bus. Don't make the people that aren't using it pay for it. Make the people that are using pay for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Is there anyone else that would like to, please come on up. And please know that the board members cannot comment. That's just our practice to not comment. So if you think we're just ignoring you or not responding, it's our practice to not do so during public comment.
My name is Keith Floyd, 12676 West Greenfield Road. I really enjoyed your Pledge of Allegiance here tonight. But the reason I'm here is apparently the allegiance you people have to democracy, you don't follow yourself. Such as the millage election you had on the law enforcement, it was voted down by the majority of the people. So what do? You come up with some law to come in the back door and accomplish your own individual agendas. The man out there, the same problems he has, you people with CATA have imported these people in here. You've created all these problems out here with the, you want to be developers. That man over there, you have to hire him to come in here to police the problems that you people create. And then you want me to pay for it. I would suggest you find someone else. You sort of come on the back door and me, come in on the back door and someone else. And have some of these businesses that are benefiting from your imported people you're bringing in here to pay him to take care of them. Don't pay me. You know, as far as democracy goes here, I don't understand how you got your position. You never received a vote. You were appointed, whatever that woman was or won, she never got the job. You did. How do you explain that? Apparently democracy doesn't work out here. You people have your own agenda, you're gonna accomplish it. After a while, you're gonna run out of business because people are not gonna support you anymore. You can keep taxing me, but after a while, I'll just move out. You'll see what happens to me. It's happened in Detroit. The handwriting's on the wall. Unless you guys want to clean up your act, start listening to what the majority of what the people want and do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Next speaker?
This has to come way down for me.
Yes, it does.
Good evening,
Good
with
evening,
Markwart,
Linda.
204 Geneva Circle. I don't have a comment, but I have a question. I'm looking forward to the Housing ABC's presentation on August 6th. And I want to know, and I know you're not going to respond back to me, but perhaps later in the meeting,
Yes.
you will speak to this. Will the presentation be pro and con affordable housing? Will it be pro pilots, concerns about pilots, or are the presenters going to be stacked? I see you've got Capillary Housing Partnership, MISTA, a local realtor, a local developer. Can I expect that the presenters will be stacked so that all are in favor of affordable housing projects and repealing our ordinance that prohibits pilots? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I can say that there is no agenda in terms of aside for the presenters or the presentation. It is simply to learn the jargon, if you will, of all of the different types of housing, but there is no position that the board has taken, nor have we selected presenters that are leaning one way or another. Okay, this is just so that we can all get educated.
No. David Howell, 9487 Guinea Road. My question is about something that was in the agenda packet. There was a memorandum from the township manager, and in it, he was talking about the special assessment and the fact that the special assessment itself won't make up for the total shortfall between what the township has been, paying for the Delta Patrol and what we're going to be paying in the future. And he mentioned that there were going to be some cuts. And I wondered at what point in time, can we expect to find out what those cuts are going to be? Are they cuts in personnel? Are they cuts in services? Are they cuts to abatements? What exactly are the cuts going to be? So thank you.
David. Any other public comments?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Stephen Hayward, 4304 Apple Tree Lane. But I'm here on behalf of E.T. McKenzie tonight. I understand that Wind Trace preliminary plat extension is on the consent agenda, but they asked me to attend and just in case it was removed. So I wanted to say thank you on behalf of McKenzie, and they're looking forward to providing more housing in that subdivision and working with the township to that end. So I know you don't dialogue with me, but I'm here and Brian knows how to get a hold of me if you have questions about our subdivisions. So, all right.
Thank you, Stephen. And if there are any questions, the board members will certainly ask because that's an agenda item. Any other public comment tonight? Okay, not seeing anyone else, we're gonna move along the agenda, and we are now down to the consent agenda, where there are standard items, our bills and transactions, the minutes, and then there are some other items listed there that information was provided to the board members and the public. If there are no questions or any requests, I will receive a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there support? Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call. Clerk Clark?
Trustee Cascarella,
Yes.
trustee Loman,
Aye.
trustee Bowen, trustee Mohica, treasurer Fedewa, clerk Clark is yes, supervisor Brewer,
Yes.
motion carries.
We are now down to new items of business, and this is going to be the sheriff's contract funding. And I am going to turn that over to Manager Reed.
Thank you Supervisor Brewer and board members. And I will have our finance director, Courtney Nichols, here for any technical questions as well. But as you know, at the last board meeting, consensus was to move forward with the special assessment for public safety under Public Act 33 of 1951. So one of the first steps is to set the first public hearing, which would be to create the district, which would be the township at large, which we're proposing for August 4th. And we have a resolution in the packet showing that. And then also wanted to point out, which I can have Courtney touch on, we do have some supporting materials too, as far as past budget for the Delta Patrol and the proposed budget. And a proposed statement or a notice that we will have mailed out. Would you like to touch on that, Courtney?
Yeah, so what would be getting mailed out this week, basically, if the board chooses to set the public hearing, is the exhibit A, the notice of the hearing. That would be one side of the piece of paper. And then the other side would be the flyer, that's the last part of that item. And that would have the individual information for each person on the cost. So it would have, and we're not required to send that, but we are, and we're sending it for the first one, not just the second hearing. Just to, be transparent with the amount. And then we also included some sort of frequently asked questions. We don't have a ton of room, but we did try to include, and then we are gonna have the deltami.gov/public safety is repurposed now to have information about the assessment. So the project that we're funding is basically the sheriff contract. And we are, as Mr. Howell said, working on how we're going to fund our portion of that. We have things that, so we can probably speak more to that in August. I think the department director's budget requests are due August 1st. So that will give us a better idea of where those are coming from. As the board knows right now, we're not considering people reductions. That's not on the table at this time, but we should be able to.
You're looking at some of the line items, and we're going into budget season.
Anyway.
Anyway,
Correct.
so this is a good time.
Yeah, the biggest one probably is paying for our retiree healthcare out of our trust. That's about $500,000 right there. So we have 136% funded trust fund. So we're gonna start pulling the payments out of there for the foreseeable future. So that's about $500,000 of it right there, to give you an example of some of the things that we're talking about. But probably the most important thing today is we wanted everyone to be comfortable with that flyer that's gonna go out. And then if anyone has any comments on that, and then yeah, it's just that resolution. So it's not choosing to do it, it's just choosing to set that first public hearing.
Right. Thank you. Are there any questions for Courtney before a motion is presented? Not hearing any questions. Is there anyone that wants to make the motion?
That the Delta Township Board adopt the resolution and set the public hearing for August 4th, 2021.
Support. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, do we need a roll call vote for that, or we're good, Mary?
No, we're good.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Courtney. And for the public, just know there will be certainly more information, as Courtney mentioned, on that. Well, Courtney and Brian, will that be on the website as well?
Yes.
Great. Good deal. We are now to the manager's report. Manager Reed?
Thank you Supervisor Brewer and board members. One bit of sad news just to pass along to any board members who knew her, but Janet Hilbert passed away, who's wife of former Chief Vic Hilbert, who died earlier this year. So just to give you an update that they have a celebration of life August 23rd at United Methodist Church in East Lansing. So anybody who was not aware of that,
Funeral.
Yeah.
Celebration of life.
so send our thoughts to the family. I also, I just want to take a moment to walk through a couple things. Over the last week or two, there's been a lot of misinformation on social media and with some members of the public. So I just want to take a moment to clarify some of those things. One of it is a new piece of information. We did receive official confirmation from Night Magic Displays and Dick Wilson, who owns Night Magic Displays at the township, will not be charged for canceling the fireworks contract. So they were aware of the situation we were in. We just couldn't officially announce it till it was official. So there was no 40% charge with that contract. Again, I want to make sure that we make it clear that a financial consideration for the fireworks was a very small component of canceling it. The main reason was the availability of public safety officers, which have run short the last few years. It is a major event with tens of thousands of people. If you have stood out there in the midst of people with our EMS crews, our firefighters, our deputies, there is a lot of activity. In addition to having to service all of our normal calls throughout that day, which is heavy because it's a holiday. So the main consideration is we did not have enough law enforcement officers and a worry about how many would be left, given the county situation and the contract situation, in addition to other communities not sending over theirs, which we receive a considerable amount of mutual aid every year of communities willing to donate their officers. So East Lansing, Michigan State Police, MSU. So I just want to make sure that that is very clear for people, because I've seen different information. Our contract was through September 30th. You know, the county hadn't made cuts yet, or that more deputies were moved up to Delta. We need close to 100 law enforcement officials and private security to pull off that event. In addition, you know, our fire department can tell you they are stretched, even though it's in our contract that no vacation time is allowed on July 3rd. It's a tremendous undertaking for our firefighters and EMS professionals as well. So that I'm willing to answer any questions from anybody or calls from the public if they would like more information on that. Again, I know our board is very well aware, and most people who come to the board, but again, I keep seeing it put out there that the bank intercounty drain was a township project and that we passed that assessment along. That is not true. That's an intercounty drain. The township at large has had to pay a considerable assessment as well. So I just wanted to make sure that we have that on record, that the township at large has a $13 million assessment in addition to our residents who are also being assessed. Don't want to diminish the effect on our residents at all. It just, that was not a township-led initiative or assessment project. The The new sheriff's contract, which we are still working on language for that. And Eaton County's financial issues, we did have a great contract for a lot of years, $4.5 million for the level of service that we received. We've said it before at previous meetings, Meridian Township, a similar sized community. Police budget is over $8 million a year, not even counting the administrative costs and HR, IT, that type of thing. We would have enjoyed to stay with the old contract. In fact, the Eaton County said that we would be able to stay with the old contract if either the November millage or the May millage had passed. They did not pass. They were very clear that the contract could not stand unless those millages pass. That leads us to the situation that we are in. I think and historically, Delta Township's been a very good steward of the township's money. We've been recognized as a township of excellence. We've received tons of financial awards in the past. We've kept tax rates very low for a lot of years. We've carried a healthy fund balance over the years to prepare for catastrophic events, which was 2025. In terms of receiving a $13 million assessment and having to adapt to a new police contract. And we're, I think, going to be able to navigate that, well, not without impacts to the community or the township, but I just would like it said, we have been good stewards of the township money. And I think the last thing is, we have heard, I think, why did we build a new sheriff's substation? If we knew that this contract issue was going to happen, efforts to build a new sheriff's substation actually began in 2006. So we're close to 2 decades now. And we did an independent study back in 2019, which showed that that building was highly recommended to be replaced. It had many critical failures in all the major structural heating, cooling. It was going to be more expensive to try to redeem that building and renovate it. So these projects take many years to come to fruition. Did not know exactly the situation we'd be in 2025 when we started that process in 2019. So again, we've done that project. That was a voter approved project. It came in under budget in terms of what was projected. And I think, thanks to our deputies, partnership with the county, Courtney Nichols, who managed that project, has been a very good project. So I just wanted to provide some background for those in relation to what we've seen on social media and some calls that we received into the township where I think residents have been very happy once we've clarified some of those things for them. I think that as staff, can be demoralizing to hear some of those things. I think we do a pretty good job of trying to get that information out. But it is certainly understand most people don't live this day to day. So sometimes it just bears repeating. And I said, a lot of us are willing to answer additional questions or sit with anybody who is interested and wants to understand some of the background of these issues. So I appreciate the board indulging that and happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Manager Reed. Are there any questions for Manager Reed at the board table? We really appreciate you going through that list because sometimes it's better face to face to sort of clear things up and put down information that we think is going to give people the biggest bang for their buck in terms of understanding what took place. So thank you for going over those points. We do appreciate those. All right, anything else before we move down to committee of the whole? All right, the first item under committee of the whole is going to be for Peter. He's going to talk to us about proposed changes to the capital improvement programs.
Yeah. Thank you Supervisor Brewer. Just a minute here to explain this. There's a memo from me on page 81 of the PDF meeting packet for those of you that have access to that here. So in general, I'm proposing a slight change to the capital improvements program. And I just wanted to get some initial feedback on how that would work. So right now, the process is generally the staff in conjunction with us, a subcommittee of the planning commission, put together information on the year's capital improvement, the projects for the coming year. Everything okay here?
No, that's just Fox 47 getting interviewees. You keep.
It is. Hey, Will, can you wait?
Chance to.
Yeah, we are having a meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. So the CIP is prepared every year by our staff. They meet with a subcommittee of planning commissioners and go over it. And then all of those are ultimately forwarded to the board. The planning commission reviews the projects in the CIP from a financial perspective. There's a complicated weighting system that's put together that helps kind of prioritize those projects. This is all done under the capital improvements or under the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. And, obviously that's a document that applies statewide and with so many different communities and varying levels of, I think, not to be sophistication from the context of the budgeting process, but Delta Township has a very sophisticated budgeting process. We have a lot of eyes on our budget. And the planning commission input on the capital improvements might be better suited from a perspective of how projects align with the master plan and using what's called a section 61 review. And what I'm ultimately proposing is to kind of switch the delegation of the CIP to preparation. Right now it goes to the planning commission by statute. We could switch the delegation of that to the township manager, who in turn could delegate it to me and to our staff. We would prepare the CIP like we always have through Courtney's office and through the department heads and through Courtney's office. That information ultimately would get routed back to the manager for use in the annual budgeting process. It would shift the priority from away from the planning commission to instead focus on kind of the appropriateness in the context of the master plan for the projects themselves. So the way it would kind of functionally work is instead of having the planning commission gather as a subcommittee and have a meeting with department heads and go over all the projects, which admittedly is just it's timely on the preparation on the staff end. And I'm not sure, and this is no disrespect to the planning commissioners, because they're looking at it from a financial perspective, if we're totally really utilizing kind of the land use and policy focus that group has and use that lens on the capital improvements projects. Instead, the planning commission would still see the capital improvement projects, but instead of seeing them all at once as part in like a financial perspective, they would see them on a project by project basis as they come along throughout the year or throughout a number of years. And they would be able to look at the appropriateness in what the state act calls character, location, and extent. So rather from a financial perspective, they're kind of looking at how does this align with the goals of the community? How is it in the right spot geographically? Does it align with kind of the land use goals of the community? And is it the proper project in the appropriate place? So to effectuate that, we would need just a slight code amendment. And you're really just kind of just a couple different words to change around in a section of the code of ordinances. I did introduce this concept to the planning commissioners at one of their recent meetings, and they voted to pass a motion in support of this. So I guess the bottom line is that planning commissioners would still be involved with the CIP process. The process itself would slightly change. I personally, I think for the better, this has worked for me and my experiences in other communities to rearrange the process so that kind of the financial eyes are on the financial aspects of the projects and the land use policy eyes are on that aspect of it. So, and I think one potential challenge, one thing to consider is that the provisions of the state act don't necessarily apply evenly to every community. The CIP process through the planning commission may work in some communities, and I guess I don't want to say that it doesn't necessarily work now, but it might run a little more smoother for us little more smoothly for us if we were to kind of divide those out and have the project run, the process run a little bit differently.
Thank you. I think Clerk Clark has a question and then I'll.
I-
see if there's-
I
and then
do.
we'll go to.
So
Yeah.
Peter, in our general mid-Michigan area, what communities use the format you're proposing versus the format we actually currently have?
I've only worked at two other ones. Meridian Township is the best example that I use. And that's, yeah, it's been set up that way since I think 2008.
Where they use the manager?
Yes, correct.
Okay, just for clarity.
Yep.
Okay.
Trustee Cascarella?
Yeah, I think less of a question, more of a comment. You know, prior to serving on the board, I spent 7 years, as a planning commissioner member here in Delta Township. And much of that time served on the CIP committee. Loved it because you learn so much about the projects, the priorities of the department. You really understand where different needs are and you evaluate that. So it is certainly time intensive. And I just wanted to offer that my perspective, just because it might be helpful for other board members. And that I was a bit surprised. It is a lot of, the planning commission really was determining what those funding priorities were through that process, but I was also, enlightened, I guess, as I became a board member and then learned all those hours and hours of work, were received as a recommendation to the board, but there was just really a different process, I think, that kind of ultimately followed in what projects the board chose to and through work with the department. So in my mind, this makes a lot more sense that it is really more of a function of our managers with the planning department and the departments to prioritize versus the planning commission to kind of be upfront and making those decisions. Certainly enlightening. I loved being part of that process and learning about what those needs were and understanding where we had capital needs across the township. But I don't know if the value really resonated through all the time invested by staff and planning commission members.
Thank you. Any other comments, Josh? anything?
I have one more question, just for point of clarity, Peter. So our current system, if I have a project as a department head, I can put it forth and it goes to a broad spectrum of people.
It would go to the subcommittee of planning commissioners, which is typically 3.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, so under the new way, it would go to the manager.
It would go to the manager, but also it would go to the entire planning commission. And they would review it under what's a section 61 review. They would still review the project. They just wouldn't necessarily prioritize it from a financial
Okay.
perspective.
So there's still a broad, no offense, but I don't want you to say no to my projects, Brian. So this is all about self-interest. No, I'm kidding. So there still would be a broad look. I just want to make sure we don't put ourselves in a position at some point in the future where we have someone that's making a decision that's closed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
If I could,
Please,
Peter,
please.
I would look at it as very similar. And Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not usually operating in that space, but very similar to the budget. So the directors submit budget requests to the manager and.
Correct.
And with the finance director and our team, we put together a recommendation. Ultimately, the board makes the decision based on the recommendation. The CIP would be very similar. Now, there's the planning component, it's in the Planning Enabling Act. It would go through the subcommittee, but it's still a list of projects that we as a team are all aware of that gets put together into a useful document that's a guiding structure moving forward that hopefully helps inform the budget, but also plans for the future and for grants and that type of thing. So
If I ask for the world in my budget, you have the opportunity to take a red pencil to it. If I ask for the world in capital projects, other people are gonna know that I asked for the world. I want to make sure other people know I asked for the world.
Yeah, we would have, every project would be before the planning commission. My team would write up memos, kind of summarizing the project. They would have, it would be on the agenda for people to weigh in on. And we'll still see them, albeit from a different, a slightly different perspective. Not that the planning commissioners couldn't comment on the financial aspect of things as well. And to use Brian's analogy, I mean, I think that is exactly what we're doing is we're incorporating the CIP into the budget process rather than it being its own separate thing that gets separate consideration, separate approval. It's part of the budget moves forward. CIP is a crucial component of it already. So it's just kind of really just making that process a little easier for all parties involved.
I just
Well, I
want to
love
be
that it's-
clear on the process.
Yeah, those are really good questions
Yeah.
for clarity, and I like that we're
Not that I've
looking
ever
at.
been refused, please don't.
Sure. I love that you're looking at processes and how can they evolve
Mhm.
and how can we go from great to greater. And so I appreciate that you look at these internal procedures that we may have done for years and years and years and give them a refresh. So that there's two paths, basically. The financial arm will be viewed in one area and the project will be viewed, and what I like about that, in alignment with the plan. So we stay very focused on what we're doing. So I appreciate that opportunity. And I know this is something that you wanted to see if the board was in support of it.
Yeah.
This is not a vote kind of issue, but
Right.
I'm seeing nods. I do believe that it is okay to continue down the path of pursuing this change.
Okay, I will draft some language and have it available for an upcoming board meeting. Thank you for
Thank you,
the
Peter.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. We are now to one of our favorite parts of the agenda this time of the year is the department presentations. And now we're going to have a presentation on the building department. Here comes Matt. Good evening.
Good evening. Madam Supervisor, board members. Is it up on the screen?
It's coming up. It's just taking a minute to turn on.
So there we go. Okay, 2024 boards. Most of you know, I'll briefly go over, we handle all the inspections, permits for new construction, remodeling. Our department also does the code enforcement, rental inspections, which includes the code enforcement, anything from blight to unlicensed, inoperable vehicles. And our main focus is to try to work with the township residents, contractors, developers to hopefully their project goes smoothly. If there's any questions when we're going through this, just stop me. I believe you all know who I am. Been here 22 years, a little over 22 years. We hired Crystal there in 23. She's been a great asset to myself for the department. She handles all the day-to-day stuff, the customers that walk in, phone calls, schedules inspections. So. But we have a wide variety in years of experience with the township. I've been here the longest on the department. We've got one that's been here since 2006, 2014, 2022. But they're all contractors at one time. And I think they all do a pretty good job for the township. And then last year, most of you know, I think we had one rental inspector, code enforcement officer retire. And another one resigned to go someplace else. We had to hire two new ones. And Anton, he's been with the township since 2019, so that was a promotion from within. And then We got Nathan, so they started last May. They hit the ground running because they were thrown into a lot of rental inspections and code enforcement right off the bat. But I think they've done a good job. They're still trying to improve our systems. And I think both of them have made a good addition to the department. Here's just a chart showing the permits that were issued in 2024. They're broken down by month. And then there's a different graph with the same thing. And this is this is only building permits showing you the value of the permits. Because the building permits are the only permits that we collect the project cost of the job. Everything else is done piecemeal based on what they're doing. So that's why we only have project costs for the building permits.
So Matt, what were the 2 or 3 largest commercials that brought in nearly 7,300 in permits? Sorry.
Yeah, off the top of my head.
Well, was Altium, not now Altium,
No.
but will always be Altium. It was the year before.
That was, I believe that started actually in 2022.
Okay,
That's, I think we have a chart coming out. that
okay. I'm good.
shows-
I know where you live.
Okay. There, 2022, you can see where the value was.
Mhm.
And then we go up and down, we're not down that much in permits, it's just smaller construction value permits compared to some of the larger projects that are still ongoing that we started in 21 and 22. This is just a comparison of the amount of permits issued when we started our online applications for permits. They go up and down, there's really, it all depends on who's doing the work. A lot of the contractors they have their admin assistant all set up and they do everything online. We have some that don't really like to do it online. And those numbers fluctuate because most homeowners, some use it, some don't. So I can never gauge, we'd like to get to the point where we were completely online permitting like some other areas, but we get enough right now that we haven't done that.
Is there anything we can do to drive traffic in that direction?
Anybody that is willing, we walk them through the process, help them get their account set up because they have to sign up with an account with BSNA, and we'll walk them right through the process. Because when permits are applied for online, it's a lot less paperwork within the office, so it cuts down on, speeds things up. So we're hoping to get that way eventually, but in the meantime, if somebody says, that's gonna be an hassle, we're like, well, we can help you walk right through it, or then all you gotta do is like logging into your email.
Mhm.
And here's just a comparison of the permit fees brought in each year. The breakdown of inspections by the one on the left is just the last couple of years, and then there's some more data from previous years. Rental program, most of you are aware of, we did go up in rental units in 2024. We've been fluctuating a little bit, but we have gone up. We're around 7,200 units, which that counts each apartment, each hotel room. So that's not 7,200 different buildings. It's, based on each individual unit.
What was that increase from? What was it prior? Do you know?
Go to the next screen, please.
Oh, sorry,
6838
thank you.
in 2023 to 7203. And we saw a drop there, but it's been, as you can see, steadily going up. And a lot of that depends on the economy and if people decide to sell their homes instead of continuing to rent on them, or sometimes they move back into them, but I didn't expect us to increase that much in 2024, but
And are people to register their rentals?
yes, every one that has a rental property must register with the township, and then they pay a fee and get inspected once every 3 years. And to expand on that, typically apartment complexes and hotels will, because they have so many more units rather than just a duplex or something, we inspect 1/3 of their units every 3 years.
3 years.
So there's a 3-plan cycle, 3-year cycle plan.
So every apartment would be inspected at some point during a 3-year
Correct.
span.
They're grouped, they group them by buildings, split up the total number of units, group them by buildings. And then they have a year 1, year 2, year 3. This is talking a little bit about our code enforcement. We've been having a lot of court proceedings the last year. We've got some good pictures to show what we've gotten in return for spending that money. Here's the list of total 137 code enforcements. That breaks down by what type they were.
Blight is the number one.
Blight is the number one, and usually those spike in the springtime, right after winter. Once the snow melts, we get a large influx of blight complaints.
And what is the process? So if you go out there the first time, you give them a notice, kind of a warning thing, what are
It varies on the severity of the violation, but typically they will get a notice given so many days to either take care of it or contact the code enforcement officers if they need more time, or, but typically they're given a certain amount of days depending on what exactly it is. And we usually will send them 2 letters, which it's typically you'll get, 30, 35 days after that before we start looking at writing tickets. And then eventually, if it's not taken care of, then they go to the magistrate or to court, either to informal or formal hearing.
Thank you.
Here's some example of code enforcement, because signs, there is an ordinance that you can't have empty spaces in your signs.
I didn't know that. Glad to hear that.
And they're given, once a business goes out of business, they only have, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, a year, Peter? That their sign has to be removed and a blank put in. Here's a example of before and after of one of our apartment complexes. One of our commercial properties in the southern part of the township.
So in the case of this one on Millet, if we can back up, so they had to legally dispose of the tires.
The issue there was improper storage.
So they could be in all of those.
Right.
I gotcha.
They're limited to how many tires they can have. They're supposed to be stored in a specific way. Piled on the ground is not the right way.
Okay.
Another case of blight. Graffiti that was there for a while, some graffiti that took a little longer than we planned on, but it finally got taken care of. We have some new builds and building remodel projects. We had just a few examples for 2024, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, all of them. The Broadbent Church did a massive addition remodel.
Looks nice.
That was also an interior remodel that was a big project.
Great to see so many positive changes.
As I said before, we did hire 2 new Reynolds and code enforcement inspectors. The board approved us going into a contract with Safe Belt back in, I believe it was 2024. And we've been using for fire suppression reviews, fire suppression inspections. And that seems to be working out well for us. We also, along with that contract, if we did run into an emergency, I could get somebody for any of the other inspectors in an emergency situation if we needed backup. Right now, we're looking, because if you look at the numbers of inspections, we're looking to hopefully find a part-time building inspector to help me out a little bit. And, we'll see. It's really all I got. If anybody's got questions for me, I'd be more than happy to answer if I can.
Thank you. I think
Sure.
Clark has a question for you.
I do. What's the status of the roofless house on Mount Hope?
That we go back to court here in another month or so. It's in the court system and we are in a formal hearing before a judge.
Yeah, your last bullet, they were talking about the desire to hire a part-time inspector, building inspector. Earlier in your presentation, you showed the revenues from permits. Do those revenues cover staff costs? Are there surplus revenues that could support a part-time employee?
We did for 24. And the building department, it all depends on, but you know, sometimes we have a surplus, sometimes we don't, but they kind of wash out. It just depends on what is going on each year.
We've been pretty fortunate over the last few years with some pretty major projects that does infuse quite a bit of revenue through the building department.
Any other questions? Matt, thank you and to your department. We appreciate the work that you do out there. I know I've called through Brian to ask for somebody to go out and take a look at a property because of blight, and you guys are always right on it. I appreciate your supports and thank you for sharing this with us tonight. We are now down to public comment, our last public comment of the evening. Would anyone like to make a comment?
Same person, same address. 4 remarks or questions on things that were discussed tonight. First one is, or not everything was discussed tonight, but first question would be, how would the building permitting work for developers receiving a housing tax abatement via a pilot. Would they be exempt from all those permitting, fees and things like that? Second thing is, on the CIP discussion, I just hope that when you look at it, or when I'm sitting here in the audience thinking about it, I'm thinking about streamlining government, having good government via the consolidation of power. And, Brian does a fine job. We all have confidence in him, but, what if it was somebody like Peter, But I say that tongue in cheek. But anyway, that's how I'm looking at it, here in the audience is, because sometimes consolidation of power is a good thing. It's expedient and, it's good to have budgeting and capital improvements married together, but sometimes it can cause issues. Third thing is that in Representative Whitwer's most recent newsletter, she mentioned that construction was going to be starting this summer on the new Delta Township Senior Center. And my question is, can we expect to have a new millage for that in terms of staffing, maintenance, and all that, or special assessment? Or is that something that would come out of the current operational budget? Because you're going to have people in there, and I'm just wondering how that would work. And the last thing, not a major thing, but I notice this all the time. When you come into Delta Township from Lansing Township, there's a nice big sign there. Welcome to Delta Township. And you know that you're in Delta Township. But when I drive into Delta Township, coming from Grand Ledge, there's nothing on West Saginaw to show the demarcation line between Oneida Township and Delta Township. And nobody that I know, I know where the line is, but I think most people don't know. And, for a long time, people kind of assume that they live where their mailing address is. So they assume that they're living in Grand Ledge, when they're not. They're living in Delta Township. And so I'm really want to ask if we can put something out there that's just as prominent as what we have coming in that's, out there by Waverly Road. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. I don't know if Manager Reed has anything to add to any of that. I do know, David, that with regards to the Delta Township welcome sign, I know that has come up in the CIA as we're working with MDOT, and they're going to make changes with the boulevard. Don't know how far that's going to go, because that would be a township responsibility to financially handle that. But yes, that has come up with that. I don't know if there's anything else. Okay.
And speak to the senior center.
Yes, please. I would love for you to do.
The question about the senior center, there's been no discussion about any millage or anything. I will say, our current enrichment center was also part of that 2019 study and was recommended to be demolished and redone through the work of our staff in partnership with Representative Angela Whitwer. We received, and partnership with Waverly Community Schools, we all received $10 million to save taxpayers in Delta from having to do a millage to build a new building or to replace that building. So certainly there will be some discussions on staffing and that type of thing. We currently have 2 part-time staff that staff our senior enrichment center. But that is as far as our budget calculations with the bank drain and moving into next year, those are things that we are taking into consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment? Hearing none, are there any comments from the board? If not, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.